muted, so I will unmute myself. There we go. Welcome to episode 4 of Punk on the Rock. I'm Kevin Jones, Kevin from the Kellogg's, and this week we have a very special guest, all the way from the Bay Area, that nobody has seen in a really long time because he has no social media presence whatsoever. Keola Morse from Another Crisis and Cooperstown. Say hello.
Hello. Pleasure to be here.
How you been, Keola?
I've been pretty good, yeah. Just keeping busy.
Yeah.
Family life, all that, you know.
Yeah, so you have a kid now. Congratulations.
Yeah. Well, thanks.
Yeah. So let's talk about Another Crisis, I guess, to start with. So Another Crisis was around probably like early to mid 90s, right?
Definitely mid-90s, yeah. It was like 95, 96 or something.
Yeah, because I think I met you shortly after I moved back from San Diego, and I think we met at a Ramones show at like After Dark or something.
Oh, yeah.
And you guys hadn't started playing yet, but I think shortly after you did. So I would say it's probably around 93, 94.
No, it was later. It was much later than that, probably 95. I think I met Keoki. I met Keoki in 94, and it was him and I decided to start the band. So
okay, so let's talk about who was in the band. So you had Keoki, who was from Haleiwa. You were from Mililani. Eric Alcantara was the other guitar player. He was from Aiea. And Andrew, did Andrew live on the North Shore as well, or?
no, Andrew lived in Mililani. I knew him in high school.
Okay.
Yeah, it was. So yeah, Keoki and I met. We just kind of both had the same idea. We just wanted to start a band, listen to similar music. We were just both intent on doing that. I think, yeah, we ended up like I bought a drum set, and then he bought a PA, and he had this cool house in Haleiwa that was like alone. It was like there's no neighbors. It was literally like there was like a chop suey house and a hardware store.
Uh-huh.
He lived in a cool house like with no neighbors, so we could just make as much noise as we wanted. There was like cane fields behind us, and yeah, so we just started practicing there. And think we went through a couple of different band ideas, and then I think yeah, we just couldn't find a drummer. And I was like, I know this guy. I went to high school with him. He's pretty good. And I didn't really know how good he was. And yeah, so we brought him in, and Keoki looks at me after he leaves. He goes, "Holy shit, that guy's a really good drummer." So
yeah, seriously, like Andrew was probably like arguably the best drummer on the island at the time. Like, and when we pulled him into the catalogs, like we were so stoked because they really like pulled together that band too. So mid 90s, 95-ish or so, what was going on in the scene at the time as far as music? Like what sorts of bands were around? What kind of influenced you guys to do something a little bit different?
I forget. I think Grapefruit was really big then.
Mm-hmm.
And who else? God, I can't remember.
I guess people like
actually the catalogs, because I went to a couple of your guys' shows, and that was back when we used to play. There was that house up in like maybe Wilhelmina Rise or Aina Haina or something like that.
Right.
He used to have shows in the living room, and he said, Hawaii style, take all your shoes off. And
right.
So back in the place with the punk show wearing like socks. It was like, and you called it the punk rock sock hop.
I remember that. I actually, there's pictures from that show of like all of us sitting outside, and I had like horrible like blue like pomade like slicked back hair, like super ridiculous. But we played that show together, right? So the catalogs played that show, and you guys, Another Crisis, played that show.
No, I was in a band called All of the Above, and it was with.
That's what it was, yeah.
Chris Kelly from I think he's best known for 2-Face-4. I did that band, and I think I forgot what happened with that band, but I think I can't remember. But yeah, I ended up just starting Another Crisis with Keoki. Because we had the good setup. We were both just as determined to start this band. We were pretty excited about it. So yeah, we just started playing. And musically, we really did like the catalogs, and we liked. I think Raph and Helia Bowler started getting pretty active.
Right.
And so yeah, we were basically we got together. We just played a bunch of covers, just like those like that kind of music, like Gorilla Biscuits and Operation Ivy, and like all that kind of stuff that kids were into in the 90s. And And then we heard Andrew's drumming style. We're just like, wow, like this kind of like gives us potential to do more. So I think we just started writing. I wrote like a hardcore song with like time changes and breakdowns and like chaotic stuff. And he just came back even like Andrew just came back even crazier with the drums. It was like Jesus Christ, you know.
Yeah.
And I started discovering all those like the lo-fi indie hardcore bands as opposed to like there was like DC and New York hardcore bands, and then
Right.
there was like Abolition Records and Born Against in those groups, and
Right.
I told Eric about it. He said, "Yeah, we're doing that style," and he just like jumped up. He's like, "Dude, let me join, and him and I aligned musically so well. It was like not even a
Right.
mission. Like, come on in, dude. So the four of us just started playing, and yeah, it was epic time, man. We we wrote great music. It was one of the only bands I've been in where all four of us, all members of the band, were like completely pumped about our band. There was
Right.
no half people. It was just like everyone's excited. Like we're just gonna play music, and like it was like the focus of our life back then, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah. So there was a hardcore scene more or less. I mean, you had bands like Hell Yeah Bowlers and things like that doing more of the typical. I don't want to say typical because I know they're all watching, but more of the like New York, Boston, hardcore style, like straight edge hardcore style.
Yeah, and
You yourself.
it was just it was really good music. I loved it, and we just found this cool style that like we realized no one was doing it in Hawaii. Maybe they did. We didn't. I didn't hear it, and
Yeah.
and it just kind of accentuated Andrew's drumming style. So it's just kind of like a perfect storm of like we're doing this new music. Eric was ahead of us with the music. Like I had a couple of good records, but he was like, "Dude, here, listen. This is struggle.
Yeah.
This is like," and he just got us into all those like awesome bands. So
Yeah, I remember that. Eric like was a heavy like record like buyer. Like he was like, all on top of like all the mail order stuff. Like even like me coming from San Diego, because I was in San Diego at the time when all the Gravity and that sort of stuff was happening, and seeing those bands. But coming back to Hawaii, like I think Eric was really the only one that like actually knew all of those bands, like and cared about them. And then you got.
I think a lot of people did listen to that stuff, but I don't think they were doing it in a band. Like like Raph was always like, "Oh, I love Life's Blood." I love he's into like Downcast and all those other kinds of bands that were kind of doing that. So yeah, it just seemed like no one else was doing it. Nobody had the audacity to like scream into a mic. To be honest,
Yeah.
I had the gumption to just think anyone wanted to hear that. So
yeah. And so like I guess lyrically for Another Crisis, it tended to be a little bit more political than like sort of the more straight edge kind of like crew sort of like lyrics.
It wasn't that political. There was a couple nods to politics, like like political stances on that, but it was more like we were really into like those like personal abstract groups that would just like who's a good bit like Heroin or one of those bands, Antioch Arrow, where it's like purposely ambiguous, kind of
Right.
arty, like
Yeah.
ambiguous, but there's definitely a tone of like sarcasm and nihilism. So
Right.
but yeah, we're definitely like leftist and definitely like leftist politics, and that was definitely our inspiration. But lyrically, it was like kind of whatever. Like my favorite song from the band was called FedEx, and it was like Keoki had this like bodyboarding spot we'd go to, and we would just go to bodyboarding every day before practice, and it was cool. It was right by Chun's Reef, and it was like little off. So anytime if the North Shore was like 8 feet and like you can't go surfing there, you can go to FedEx, and it was like a perfect like 2 or 3 feet or something like that. So I wrote these lyrics for FedEx, and it's like if you didn't know I was writing about being in the water, it would sound. I was talking about like torture and liberation and all that, but I was really just talking about waves.
That's awesome. So Another Crisis lasted for quite a while. I want to say at least 2 years, right? I mean, you guys were playing actively.
I think it's just a year. I think Andrew left, and we were like, oh fuck, what are we gonna do now? We thought we'd find a drummer, but no, it was just not possible. I mean, I guess there were some drummers out there, but yeah, like just at that time, just didn't seem right to go on without him.
I tend to agree. but you guys went from playing like smaller shows like in houses and smaller shows on the North Shore to playing quite a bit at the Fast Zone. What was your experience at the Fast Zone? Like, how did you feel about what was going on around you as either, like, what was the reception to Another Crisis?
It was cool. The bouncers knew us, and they were, I think we were kind of a household name at some point.
Yeah.
The crowd turnout was hit or miss. Sometimes there'd be like 10 people there. Sometimes 300, 500 or something. So, I kind of it'll be I kind of didn't like playing there, to be honest. Like in the in the end, the sound was always bad. I mean, it felt like home. You go in there, it's like always your same friends in there and stuff like that. But as far as like a venue to play, it just wasn't that great. There's like a big floor in the middle, so you'd have like like a mosh pit in front, and then like everyone just stands on this little stage behind it. I'm just kind of it's cool. I
mean, and so you guys recorded a demo, but did you guys ever like duplicate it and get it out there, or was it more just something that
we recorded it to document it, and then I think we had intention of either doing something like vinyl or I don't know. I forget why. I think I had to remix it once or twice, and then I think I don't know, for whatever reason it just didn't come out. And friends of the bands had it, so it was cool. A lot of people, like random people, come up to me later on, be like, "Oh yeah, I have that demo. It's great, man." Like, cool. Well, and which version there's one of them where it went mono, and you can only hear the left side. You couldn't hear my guitar, but you can hear Eric's guitar. Many copies of that one went around. It was kind of frustrating, but
I have a digital copy of it that I think Todd sent me some time ago, because I haven't held on to like anything like tangible from Hawaii. Like Amber had sent me a few flyers. That's really all I have. But with the help of like a few other people, I've sort of started collecting at least digital recordings of some of the bands back then. And listening to it, I mean, like it still sounds totally fresh. Like I feel like the drum mix on that is like super solid. Like it's really tinny and like just there's a lot of high end to it, which kind of makes it sound a little, I don't know, it sounds a little bit more like artsy and less produced in a good way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, the production was a little on point because we were definitely inspired by those like lo-fi bands. So it was perfect. I think the guitars are a little too like saturated. We listen to bands that had more like a almost jangly indie sound, and having like a really heavy, which it's fine in retrospect now, but I think I wanted something a little more like the way Portraits of Past had their guitars. It was like they played through like Fender amps and stuff like that.
Right.
But yeah, it had a really heavy sound. It wasn't intentional, but it's a cool effect.
All right, so you said Another Crisis went on for about a year. So how did that end up quitting? You said Andrew moved away, I guess, right?
Yeah, Andrew just left, and we're kind of all just lost and just did whatever. I'm not sure.
I think Eric started a band called Margin of Error, right?
It's called Margin of Error, and then I don't I'm just mixing up the timeline here. I don't remember.
Me too. Yeah.
I started playing with Ray Patio at a band called Liquor, and Les was in. So I played bass for them, and then Raph called me and asked me to join a band called Back to Reality, and so that was. Yeah, I think there's overlap. I think there's some point I was playing like 3 or 4 bands at a time. I don't really remember. But.
Right. And then Back to Reality ended up becoming Cooperstown, right?
Yeah, it was funny as those guys all lived in the Windward side, and I lived, like I was working at Pearl Ridge, and they would I didn't have a car, and they would drive all the way to Pearl Ridge and pick me up, take me to practice. Kaneohe, and they lived in Kaneohe, and they would still drive the other side of the island and drop me off at home and then drive back to Kaneohe. I was like, man, these guys are like, if they're doing this for me, this is pretty awesome. I gotta,
Yeah.
It sounds like they want me in the band, so it was pretty cool.
And you started off playing bass in that band, right?
Yeah, it was so I just joined the band there. They already had like a whole roster, like 20 songs written, or I don't know, whatever, 10, I don't remember. Yeah, it was fun. It was cool playing with those guys. And yeah, we used to I used to ride back because after a while, the singer Mark would drive me back to the other side of the island because those guys live in Kaneohe, and he
Mm.
was starting to confide in me. He's like, "Dude, I'm not vibing with these guys, man. I just want to quit the band." And I was like, I'd be like, "Don't quit the band, dude. It's a fun band, you know."
Right, right.
And yeah, so for whatever reason, they just completely parted ways. I think those guys were like not even talking or something.
Yeah, was it Mark? Mark ended up doing a band with Cam, right? Right. I
Yeah,
feel like
the B word. It was like,
yeah, right. Fanatics was the B word.
they're like a fun band. They did like folky stuff with like acoustic guitars and harmonicas and
Right. I think Cam's recently put up some of that stuff on YouTube or something.
oh, cool.
Yeah. And so Mark left. You ended up moving to vocals, and then I ended up playing bass for like a short period of time.
It was a weird, and I think the band kind of like we were that was a great band, dude. I listened to that and I'm like, no song is alike. Like all of them have unique song structures. We just combine elements in so many ways that haven't been done before, and I
Yeah.
still have not been done. And I don't know. I think it was just like magic. Like I remember, like we would just like Raph would write a part, and Rolo would have a part. We put that together, and then like I would just add a bass line to it, and it just like sounded nothing like anything else, and it sounded like nothing else I've ever heard before. And like
yeah, and just
Raph and I
for
would
everybody that
Raph and I would look at each other like, "What the fuck are we doing? This is fucking awesome!" It was just like the magic was there. Dude. It was just great, and
yeah.
so yeah, and then they said, "Oh, well, we're gonna get Jeff. Jeff Gu is going to he's gonna sing." I was like, "Okay, cool. Like he's a great front man. I like the way he growled." And
Yeah.
so that was cool. And they're like, "Oh, what do you want to call the band?" We had all these ideas, and back then, everyone who went to shows back then all played baseball on Sundays. I think we all went to Manoa Park and we would just play baseball.
I
And
remember that, yeah.
but you were the one who came up with the name because they're like Raph and Josh and Rolo were just really into baseball. Like they were good. They were like the best guys out there. Like, Josh could hit the ball out of the park.
Yeah,
Rolo like a double or a triple. I was probably horrible, but I think
dude, I during one of those games, I like hit a ball directly into one of the overhead lights and smashed it. Like all the way in the outfield. I was man. That's great. That was super fun. And then we started playing softball, and it kind of got boring. It was like, I don't remember actually coming up with a name. Like, so
yeah, you really said that. You were sitting in the dugout. You're like, oh, well, if you guys love baseball so much, you want this baseball theme, Cooperstown. And I didn't even know what that was. I didn't even know what the Baseball Hall of Fame was. But like they all knew, like, oh, that's the great idea. So we just called it Cooperstown. It's a cool band.
I did not remember that at all.
Yeah, I definitely remember you coming up with that. So that's funny.
Well, I do remember joining the group, and I think for whatever reason Jeff Gu left. Was it because he moved from Hawaii, or did he just not want to be in a band anymore? Or?
No, it was. I think it was drama for some reason, and it's unfortunate because I was really happy with the band that way, and I think someone wasn't getting along with him, and at the same time, like, I was happy playing bass, but at the same time, like, I had all these lyrics I wrote that I never used, and they were political. And at the same time, Raph was very political. So we were both like, I think Raph and I were totally vibing on each other with that. And like, he was like, he's reading a lot of like Malcolm X. I was watching all these Black Panthers documentaries. And, and then I really got into like Haunani K. Trask for like the Hawaiian rights activism. And so we started writing lyrics that were just like, fuck the man, fuck capitalism, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And it was just like, all right, Raph's like, you're the singer, I was like, cool, well, whatever. But yeah, and the band just kind of fell apart after that. It was weird. I think there was just always all of us.
You guys kept going. You guys kept going even after I left, because I only played with you guys for like a couple months, and then I ended up moving to upstate New York, and then you guys recorded after I left.
Was it before? Yeah, maybe.
No.
Yeah, I think
it was after.
But yeah, I just remember thinking like that band was essentially it was the four of us. It was me, Josh, Raph, and Rolo.
Rap and roll,
and
yeah.
we wrote all the music together. We got you to play bass. Yeah, that's right. Because some of those songs are like we wrote after Jeff, but yeah, it was. So yeah, I did. I went in. We did the recording, and what did we do? That one I wanted to go straight to vinyl, and some other people tried to send it off to labels, and other demo tapes were made. I don't know how far that stuff made it, but yeah, I just love that music, man. I like if I listen to that to this day, I'm just like I still don't. There's only so much sound you can put into hardcore, and then until it doesn't sound like hardcore anymore. And I feel like we found this like cool groove and the structure that didn't exist, and
yeah, I felt like those songs were really abstract, and then like in the song in the intro, the bass kind of brings it all back together in a lot of the songs, right? Like, I remember there were songs where there would be just like crazy chaotic bits, but the bass would kind of just like kind of like keep it moving or whatever.
Yeah, we were definitely listening to a lot of jazz back then, and then, lyrically it was like we were just like there's a couple lines like it was literally like Malcolm X quotes, and then we put some Malcolm X samples in there.
Yeah.
One of I forgot which song you played in the intro, but that one like Raph wrote like an essay. I don't know if it was for school or something, but it was it was called Lamenting the 50th State and everything wrong with our politicians pocketing money and just not serving the people, serving greed, blah blah blah. That we were really into that theme, and yeah, and then in the other intro to the whole album, I was reading an essay by Hanani K. Trask, which I was really into about colonization. So, every song was like had its own unique structure and a very distinct like lyrical topic. Yeah, I was really proud of that band. It was really it's really unfortunate though. We just like we were just kind of toxic to each other, like all of us. I think we'd be on the phone and be like, probably with every single member of the band, we talk to each other, and then we talk about someone else and be like, oh, that guy? Oh, fuck, man. I'm sick of him. Let's kick him out of the band.
Yeah.
But like everybody in the band, it was just like, so I don't know how, why, or when we broke up or who called it, but it was definitely needed because we were just like, I love those guys today. I haven't seen any of them. I've checked in. I've seen like, what they're doing, like Raph and Rollo's bands and stuff. They're pretty awesome. But at that time, like you just get a bunch of young males, late teens, early 20s. They're just, there's some stupid machismo shit going on where everyone's trying to outcompete each other. So,
right. And that's kind of something I wanted to bring up too. I feel like, both of those bands that you were in were kind of sort of the antithesis of the macho kind of like hardcore that was more prevalent in Hawaii. For whatever reason, maybe it was the people in those bands, maybe it was, just the atmosphere, but I felt like, Another Crisis and Cooperstown were kind of trying to break that mold a little bit. And I think, maybe it ended up succeeding because what came after you guys tended to be a little bit more liberal and a little bit more left leaning. I feel like, after I moved to New York and moved back, what was going on was very like, there were a lot of women fronted bands. There were a lot more, politically focused bands. And I feel like, that earlier, like, breaking the mold of like the tough guy hardcore thing sort of helped progress that a bit.
I mean, yeah, totally. This, yeah, it was just, we were just doing what we did. And I don't know what came after that or what, but, it was, I'm glad, like, as I was telling you before we started, is like, I'm watching all these other interviews of like, bands from back then, and like, they all have a legacy. And I always felt like sad how much work we put into it.
Yeah.
For what we did on the island. And, it's like, almost nobody remembers it. Like, there's no recordings out there. There's like, it says, and it's fine. Like, I don't want to live in the past, but it's kind of like, I thought we did good music. I thought we had a good thing going. So,
yeah, I think, it's one of those things where, nobody outside of Hawaii, like really nobody knows anything about what went on. Like even, things that went on from the 70s, all, late 70s, all the way back, 80s, Cringer, double, like those Flying Fucking A-Heads, like all those bands like were amazing. Like, and I think it's, it's probably just exposure. and like limited access to like, recording and distribution and all of that. And then finally you had people like Jason Miller who came along and actually started releasing a lot of that stuff and getting it outside of Hawaii, to his credit, which is awesome. But yeah, I mean, for the most part, like during that mid to late '90s period, there really isn't too much documentation outside of like people like who collected demos, you know. Anyway, so when did you end up? What did you end up doing after Cooperstown then?
I don't honestly, like I think I finally got into UH then. I just wanted to just be a student. It's like kind of I think I was just trying to find like people, like, like-minded people. Do you want to be in a band? And like, it just wasn't, it was just like a big uphill battle to get started over again. And I got accepted into UH. I was like, I should just be like a full-time student. Cause, like those, like Another Crisis was a good band, but we put a lot of work into that. We probably dedicated 20 hours a week to that band, just like, commuting plus practice plus hanging out plus all that kind of stuff. So,
right.
But yeah, I just went to school full time for a while, and then I think I didn't start playing music until a couple years later. I think it was like Tino's, but one of them wanted like a bass player. I was like, cool, I'll just come in. I filled in. I played a couple of gigs with them. We played at like those downtown lounge shows, like Havana Cabana, stuff like that. Yeah, but as far as like punk and hardcore, I don't think I did anything after that, to be honest.
Yeah. And you kind of got into the hip hop scene a little bit too, as well, like maybe once you moved from Hawaii, right?
Yeah, I did. I did. I used to go to a lot of hip hop shows in Hawaii. Like that was like late '90s. So like there's like drum and bass was like still new and fresh. What else is going on? There's a lot of cool raves at like Climbers Paradise and stuff like that. But it was, still had that same vibe. It was like, I always bring it back to it was the Back Door. And as a kid going to the Back Door, I was like 12, 13, and just seeing what that was. There's like it. And so I've always just found myself attracted to those like new fringe things that are like nothing official about it, like
just underground and fun, like before it gets exposure and gets watered down a little bit.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to go down that angle, but like there's just something about like I guess before people start making money or it turns into a business or something. Like the Back Door was literally like it was a plate lunch place, and they served plate lunch to airport workers, and they had this back room that was too big for what they know what to do with, so they'd put on shows once in a while. Yeah. They do reggae once a month, and then they would do like punk, hardcore, and metal once a month. And there was no bouncers. Like you just went in there. If you act like an idiot, they'd beat your ass. You'd be out of there. There was no thing about like just nothing official. No one was making money. It was just like people that loved music, and just people. There's a dedicated audience. And I think everything else I get into just kind of has some element of that. Yeah, man, I just so many those memories. And it's like I remember this time. It was just normal to see a guy like just pass out on the stairs with no shirt on. Just so like that kind of stuff. Or like I remember this time two like military guys came in and just tried to like just get it, like they're in the mosh pit. They're just trying to be so tough and got in everyone's face. And the entire club, probably like 200-300 people, just all came in and just beat those two guys down and chased them down the street. And not that it condoned violence today, but it was like just seeing that when you're like 12 or 13 years old, you're just like, damn, man, this is some crazy shit.
I've talked about the Back Door in some of the previous episodes with, especially with Willie when I did the interview with him. But my first experience at the Back Door was definitely with Mike Mays from Milwaukee. We went to intermediate school together, and I think it was close to the end. It had to have been because I was in 7th grade, I guess. So whenever that was, and we ended up there and definitely saw BYK and MUG, I think. And I just remember like, like there was no bouncers. It was like this random space, like, like by the airport. And
Yeah,
there was a lot. There was a lot of violence back then. I mean, and like you say, I can't condone the violence now, but it was always sort of that, like, we're gonna knock out a Nazi tonight, like, because they had the gall to show up to the show, like, and then you had people like Bruce, who always stood in the middle of the pit at the fucking back door and like kept everybody in line, like, and picked people up when they fell and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, there was that like sort of like family atmosphere, but at the same time, like, people like had a lot of pride and a lot of like, yeah, I guess just a lot of pride in what was going on in the scene back then. And I think you're right. Like, I tend to gravitate towards those things, like whatever they may be, whether it be like art or, music or
yeah,
whatever.
something that's just new and not commodified yet, and it's just like
Yeah.
something really inspiring about that and what comes out of that. Like, it's like every great movement, like hip hop started in the '70s because they could loot record players from like, and that's suddenly
Right.
every DJ that summer, and then like boom, Grandmaster Flash comes out, and like
Yeah.
there's just so many like
Well, and we don't,
that change.
I haven't really tried to make it a focus of this, but even when I interviewed Mindy and Lonnie from Sorry, we sort of talked about the hip hop scene in Hawaii, the underground hip hop scene in Hawaii, groups like Proletariat and stuff like that. Like, I mean, they were kind of like, moving parallel with the punk scene at the time. Like, it was very underground. Their music wasn't really getting released anywhere, outside of Hawaii. Eventually, I think the Proletariat did get some stuff outside of Hawaii, but like that scene was really cool.
And like that group, like
I'm sorry.
Proletariat, the group, actually, like it was like Jason and
Yeah.
Dustin. And,
Yeah.
those guys are. I think they got put out by ATAC or one of those. I forgot what. They're on like the big distribution that if you wanted to buy like underground hip hop at the time, you went on that website. Like you could buy their shit on there. It was pretty cool.
I met a lot of people. Like, there was a lot of crossover, like, with the underground hip hop crew and the hardcore crew. Like, probably later than Cooperstown and stuff like that. I'm thinking probably early 2000s. But like, people like Jonah Ray and like Donald Abel and Jason, people that were into like all the San Diego hardcore stuff, like in the early 2000s, were also very much a part of like the hip hop scene. Like, thinking like TRE and like people like that.
I call it the iPod generation. It was like,
Yeah.
when you want to listen to music, you had to commit. You had to be like, I'm going to spend $10 on a CD or a set or whatever record, and that's what you just choose wisely. And suddenly, it's like you can just download all the music, and like people, all of us just started listening to every genre. It's really cool.
Yeah. So when did you end up leaving for the Bay Area?
I left like 2002, I think. Somewhere around that time, yeah. I just I finished school and I was like, I just want to live in a bigger city. So came up to the Bay and just never wanted to leave. It's pretty awesome lifestyle here. It's very progressive.
Right.
Well, it was. It's not so much anymore. But when I first got here, I was like, everyone here is like politically aligned. There's you can get meatless food at every restaurant. I didn't have to drive a car. I didn't own a car for like 15 years. I would just ride a bike,
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. I was totally felt like I was in this progressive land. Good 10 years or so. And then that kind of just went away. Every little interesting city just kind of went that way in the last 10 years. So it was just like yupified.
And when you got to San Francisco, like I was saying, you were kind of involved in like graffiti and stuff like that. Like, how did that sort of start for you?
I mean, I just always kind of did graffiti as a kid, and when I got there, it was like, I was like, I don't need to do graffiti because it's like that's something that puts you in jail. It's just like,
right.
It was just so inspiring everywhere you go. It's just like these people you looked up to as heroes when you were a kid, are like painting right in front of you. You're just like, oh, okay. But I didn't really get into it too much. The art shows are really cool. I ended up doing a bunch of art shows and I learned, like proper muralism. So I'd get gigs doing actual like murals and stuff like that. So, I really delved deep into that for a while. That was pretty cool.
Yeah. I think the last time I properly saw you was when Mike was still living in San Francisco, even, and that's kind of what you were into at the time. It was a while ago. Um, and I was DJing soul music by that point too. So
Was it? I was trying to think back. Did you come to SF twice? I
yeah,
feel like
twice.
one time. Yeah, okay. One time I went to see you at the Elbow Room, and I think the second time we hung out at some hotel room up on Nob Hill or something like that. I don't know if
Right, yeah.
that's trip or
It was
what.
I was there DJing like some crazy art show, and I can't remember whose art it was. It was like some celebrity or something,
Hmm.
um, some actress. But we ended up DJing her art show. But the first time, no, it was the second time. The second time I was there was when I almost wrecked one of Michael's scooters, um, trying to drive around San Francisco on one.
Oh, wow.
And I also remember going to Trader Sam's and
I don't think I went there with. That's a great bar, but I don't think I went there with you on that one.
man,
But
I
maybe
okay,
there a
so
lot. Those scorpion bowls will just like put you in a
oh
great.
yeah, dude, exactly. Like I don't. So the day that we went there was the day that I was leaving to go back to Seattle, and I don't remember leaving the bar, going to the airport, getting on the plane. I only remember arriving in Seattle. Like like everything else was like a total blank. Like I had no idea how I got on the plane. And like I'm not the type to black out, but the scorpion bowls were like crazy. Um, so all right, so let's get back to music then. So you're in San Francisco. Did you know start playing in bands again? When did that happen?
Yeah, I had a coworker randomly. It was just talking about music once, and then we fell down this rabbit hole. He had no idea that I listened to a lot of those like those '90s like bands that were like not well known,
Mm.
bands that only released records on vinyl and stuff like that. And so yeah, we were just excited. We were talking about I used to be in a band. I used to be in a band. It was all this. And then like he just called me randomly one day. He's like, "Hey, do you want to play drums in this band?" I was like, "Yeah, sure." I was like, I never played drums that well before, but I was like,
Mm.
I don't think at that point I probably wouldn't have wanted to play guitar or bass because I did enough. So I was like, I
Yeah.
wanted that challenge of like playing drums. Like, so I did that for a while, and then that band lasted for like 3 or 4 years until someone moved out. The band was called The Wasteland. We did like dark, whatever it's called, dark rock, kind of like ISIS and Neurosis and I forget what we were into. Godspeed You Black Emperor and all that just
Mm-hmm.
groovy dark music. It was kind of a cool
Yeah.
band. And then what happened? And then then I got into audio engineering. I started working at a studio. So I was just always there. Started recording a lot of people.
Yeah, you worked with like some big time ass celebrities and stuff, right? Like
Yeah, it just turned into this thing where it was like, I had a background in hip hop, and a lot of those guys were into like bluegrass and like, classic rock and indie. And so
yeah.
it was like every time someone would call doing rap, I'd be like, "Oh, let's give it to Keola." And so I
Yeah.
kind of ended up being like the hip hop guy. And I was fine with that, but I do like the microphone drum set and do all that kind of like, like getting a good tone out of an amp and stuff like that. But
Right.
I basically just did hip hop for like a good 5-6 years. So like,
Well, who did you work with? Like, who were some of the artist records you worked on?
I think the first person I was excited to work with was Equipto. He did that. He did those albums with Andre Nicotina, and I
Mm.
worked with who else was good? Like Fat Lip was one of the first guys. Fat Lip from the Far Side. Um, God, who else? Rappin' Forte was a big artist that ended up becoming his like main engineer. He'd always come in like once a week. He was doing a lot of mixtape stuff, so I just do one verse for him. I was like his main guy for a good 3 or 4 years. I think there'd be some other people I'd be like, "Who's this?" And I didn't know who they were. And like when they go in the booth, like Google their name, I'd be like, "Oh, okay." So I worked with like Big Tit and like Jazz. I don't remember at this point.
Mm.
That
Did you?
was a good 4 or 5 years ago when I was like in the studio like 24/7. So
Right. Which studio was that? It was on Fillmore, right?
no, it was Hyde Street Studios. It was like
High Street.
the first studio ever built in San Francisco. Well, I mean the first like real like professional studio.
Mm.
It was built by Wally Hyder. He designed like really good circuits and really good acoustics and stuff like that. So they had like an old vintage 70s Neve board. It was just, really great to learn on. So
Yeah. Were you mentored by anyone there at the studio, or did you kind of just, learn as you went?
It's funny how that industry works. They don't really mentor people. They just like they let you in the door, and if you got the spark in you, then you can just get right in there. If you don't, then you'll just be cleaning toilets for the next 2 years. Like, like really, it's like, what do you got? Like, so you kind of just have to like nudge your way in there and be like, okay, start plugging in mics for people, or like, and then you got to understand the whole signal flow and how all that works. So, yeah, I mean, I kind of basically like all that stuff is just one big guitar pedal board. Like if you understand your signal flow on a guitar pedal board, like just you can translate that to the studio. And
Sure.
so yeah, it was I was probably doing that for a good 8 years or so, and then
Was that straight like live mixing and mastering for the most part, or were you just mixing? Were you just mastering?
I was tracking a lot. Like I like live tracking. I get the most satisfaction out of that. I do mixing here and there that pays more, but it's pretty competitive sport, so or competitive field. I don't really get too many of those gigs. Mastering, I've done like a handful of times. It's cool that I had to learn that, but I don't know. That's also like a pretty saturated field. Like there's even websites you can just like put your song into it and it'll spit it out like automated mastering or something. So that's kind of like, I started like Fiverr and like all these other websites. I put a profile up and it's just so saturated. Like, literally, by a week you're buried on like the 20th page or something.
Raf, or Rolando rather, was just saying on the comment feed that Bruce is maybe back in Kailua again, which would be pretty crazy because I saw him in Seattle when he was living there. For man, like a day, and like he had all kinds of problems or something. Like, I hope he's doing well, and I hope he is back in Hawaii. That'd be awesome. Where is everybody now from Another Crisis? So I know Keoki's in Portland area, somewhere in Oregon. Eric is still in Hawaii, obviously. Andrew, what's Andrew doing?
Andrew lives in Seattle. He lives. He's like I think a merchant marine. I know he's a tugboat guy, but now he goes all over the world. So it's like he'll always be down like Philippines, Southeast Asia, Singapore, Bangkok. Between that and Seattle all the time. Sometimes he goes down to like he says he'll go in the Panama Canal and like just be on you'll end up in the Atlantic or something like that. But yeah, he just texted me like 3 or 4 days ago. So he had this cool little it's like since he's always out at sea, he doesn't have reception. So it's like when he's texting me, it's like once a year or something like that, and we just like shoot the shit for a minute. But it's pretty awesome to hear from him. He told me he was actually working in Barber's Point like just a month or two ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was like, he really liked to speak pidgin. He was like he's so like from Washington. And I didn't see him for like a good 10, 15 years or something like that. And then he came to hang out with us in San Francisco, and he just spoke pidgin the whole time. I'm like, dude, you sound really bad. But he was like, I don't think he's from Hawaii since then. So he just wanted to like remember this. He had all these like inside jokes. And I was like, oh, this is all right.
Yeah.
So he was pretty excited. So that was pretty funny.
And then the guys from Cooperstown, I know Raph and Rolando are also in Oregon. Rolando just moved to Oregon. He was in Hawaii. He was actually in Hawaii and playing with the Numbskulls when I went back for Les's memorial.
I saw what he was playing with like the guys from Broken Man. I was like, dude, this is awesome. Man. I was like,
right, yeah.
It's like, ooh, it's like.
And then Josh last I heard, Josh was in LA. And I saw a photo of him, and he has like the most epic like beard I've ever seen in my life. Like,
oh yeah, that's kind of cool.
But I feel like he's doing live sound actually in LA. I could be wrong. I know he was in a few bands, but I think that's what he's doing now.
Cool, yeah.
Sound and lighting. So are you playing music now? So.
Yeah, like I mean, so I was in that band I was telling you about a little while ago. I was like playing drums, and I think all our band, it was kind of like just Hawaii. It was all the same guys, just switched instruments and like, oh, we're gonna do this band now. And so someone else was playing drums, and they said, "Do you want to play guitar?" I was like, "Sure, okay." And then so I played guitar, and I think my wife was just like, you should just play guitar. Like I've watched you play drums, and you're just like, hey, I can see you like concentrating too much, and like you're just more of a guitarist, so you just naturally. I was like, sure. So I fell down the rabbit hole with that and just started buying more guitars and building guitars, and like now like the boutique pedals and all that stuff, man. It's just like a big rabbit hole, just like
yeah.
So I got into like building guitars. I'm really into that. I like the whole offset, like random parts. I have like a reverb.com page with just like watching all these things, waiting for the price to drop. And
right.
So I'm in my basement right now. I got this cool workbench, and so I just want to like I've only built like 3 guitars so far, but I want to like just get more into that. It would be like an awesome thing to do.
That's rad. So building new guitars.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like my bike. Like I used to use a bicycle. I'd find like an old frame from the '70s, and then but I put all modern brakes and stuff on it. So if I find some weird body from the '70s with like some weird paint job, like I'll be like, okay, I'll take that, cool, and then I'll like design a nice neck for it, and then like buy all the aftermarket like pickups and bridges and stuff like that. So that's kind of my newest passion is like come full circle. Like I'm fully into guitar again. It's funny.
Did you do that as utility, like as a utility for the new music you're making with this band? Is it all the same members then, or is it?
Yeah, kind of. It's kind of just dropped down to 3 people, and so we just recorded it's anywhere from depends how the songs turn out, but we recorded a good 6 songs. We have 2 others in the back burner. I tracked them all myself. I'm gonna edit and mix it all, so it's probably gonna take a good 4 to 6 weeks or whatever, even months.
Is it in the same sort of vein as like sort of like the darker?
Yeah, well, it was funny because we were just playing like noisy garage rock, and we were just kind of like I don't know, we had like this awakening one day, but it was like I went to go see Radiohead, and then the singer went to go see 9 Inch Nails or something like that. And we show up to the next practice, and I have my Moog synth, and he has a Korg synth. It's like, no, let's put some like electronic sounds in this shit. So we kind of doing like this. I guess you call it cyberpunk. So it's kind of like has like an anime feel. The singer writes scripts for a lot of these like dystopian novels and stuff like that. So he's so we're kind of going like kind of has that cyberpunk theme. So we're putting like more electronic sounds in it, like arpeggiators and like synthesizers and like growling bass and stuff like that. So
so what's the name of the band, and when can we expect to hear it?
It's called Alpha Leonis, and if you look up the name Alpha Leonis now, there's another band. I think they're from like Baltimore, and they play like death metal or something. But we literally fought about the name for like a good 3 months, so I just acquiesced. I'm like, I don't care. Like, call it fucking dildos from Mars. Like, I don't care at this point. So so we recorded, and like I said, like I was telling you before this call, but when you get like 4 grown adults with families and careers and stuff like that, we just don't have time to be in a band. It's like it's like we used to practice twice a week, and then now we practice like twice a month, so it's a little harder to do, but we still have the itch, so we're still doing it. When it comes out, I'll send you a link. We're gonna do it everything Spotify, like
and I'll post that to the Punk Rock Hawaii group on Facebook. Share that with people. You said you don't get to play very much now because you're adults with families and stuff like that, which I totally understand. Do you miss it at all? Do you miss like the community, like do you miss like the spontaneity of like how things were when we were growing up, and like?
Yeah, I do. I like I said, I didn't really want to play guitar for a long time. I was like, I felt like I kind of did that, and I don't want to be like the guy that repeats himself and did what he did when he was a kid. But there was a moment I was just playing guitar, and like I think like a couple years ago I flew back to Hawaii and I left my 100-watt head at my brother's house.
Uh,
The time it just sat there like getting rust, and like and I took it back, brought it back to San Francisco, and I just plugged in. I'm like, dude, this sounds sweet, man. And I was playing it, and then we were playing this show, and I was just kind of like going through the motions. Like I do like playing in a band, but it was one of this. It was like 2 years ago. It was like the Golden State Warriors just won the championship, and it was a show we played like down. It was on Half Moon Bay, right across from Mavericks Surf Break, and they had this big screen up on the stage, and like we were setting up behind it, and like in the fourth quarter, and then right when they won it, like the whole place just erupted crazy, and then the screen goes away, and we just start playing as like, and it was just like the crowd is roaring, and I was just like, wow, like that's the first time I had a show that action packed, because you play an indie band now, it's like there's like 30 people there, but like this was like that, and I just strum my guitar, and like the way it resonated with the stage, I was like, holy fuck, I forgot how much I missed this. Like, that was like 2 years ago. I had that epiphany. Like, this was a big part of me when I was a kid. So it's kind of cool to do it once in a while.
And without trying to like recreate that period, like I feel like there was something very like, I mean, it was very community driven. I mean, we were sort of forced to be because we were all stuck on an island. But I feel like that, and I do try to go to punk shows, like, and even try to like listen to new bands now, but like not as much as I probably should. But when I have gone, like I feel that's definitely missing. Like, and I don't know if it's just because I'm on the mainland now and things are have always been different, but or maybe I'm just not from here and I don't know the right people or whatever it is, But I feel like in Hawaii there definitely was, even despite like the sort of cliques that sort of happened, in the scene. Like we all knew each other. We all played, shows with each other. Like there was something really special about that, and something like, that was shared creativity or whatever. Like we influenced each other to be better at what we did because we were like, so stuck on an island, and really our only audience was ever going to be like local.
Yeah, I came to this realization because I was playing in a band in San Francisco, and every time we'd go out, there's like 3 bands on the bill, and they look at the audience. We're playing a tiny bar, and there's like 45, 50 people there, and I'm like, well, there's 3 bands, and each band has 5 members. That means each member told 3 people to come. That's your audience. Like, just it's like busy city with so many things to do. It's just like there's so many times where our band would have to play, and I'd be like, oh fuck, I want to go see this band at this other venue, or see this DJ, or there's a play to go to, or like there's just so much more to do that people have less to dedicate to like local talent. And so for years I'd play all these shows and just be like, yeah, it's like literally you're just playing to your friends, and it was hard to get traction in an audience. But on the other side of that, like the last 3 or 4 hardcore shows I went to was at the Gilman Street, and people still know. Like I walk in there and I feel like like I probably don't look the part or anything, but I know what they're talking about, and I feel like a little like a spy or something. I was like, I know what you guys are talking about, like this cheesy scene stuff, and but it's cool that still exists. But I don't have access to that or have time for that, I guess. But,
I had wanted to go back for the time that 15 did their last reunion show there, and I also wanted to go back when they did like the Gilman Street fundraiser, the most recent one. I think it was right before Lookout sort of folded, but for whatever reason I didn't get to go to either of those. But yeah, I mean, like the people that I have met in that scene are still around, and the ones that are still living anyway. And I feel that they do sort of maintain that community sort of feel. But for Hawaii, I mean, what do you think personally was so special for you about growing up in the Hawaii underground music scene? Like what made it unique in your opinion?
What was unique about the Hawaii underground? Like I don't know. It was I was there at the right place at the right time. It was like just all these memories of like we'd take the bus to a show, and the bus stops running at like 11 o'clock, and we get out at 12:30, and like you and your friends would just hitchhike home and like the crazy adventures you'd have with that. Or remember going to the airport and getting like bullied by cops because we were supposed to meet someone's friend's mom for a ride at the airport or something, and all this like bullshit. So
Yeah.
yeah, it was definitely, and like the humor definitely had our unique like I remember like Another Crisis, we pretty much had our own language. We had so many inside jokes that
Yeah.
like nobody would know what the fuck we're talking about.
Right.
But
Right.
definitely funny. Um, yeah, there's just something about that lifestyle. We should just take the bus, go to Kakaako Park with our skateboards and just like fuck off for like the whole afternoon. It's part of just
Right.
being young, but yeah, even the bands had like a fun camaraderie that I don't find elsewhere. Like I remember when I think it was like me, you, and Les were trying to revive the catalogs, and
Mm.
I think Family Fun was like playing the room next door,
Oh,
and
right.
our song just stopped, and suddenly like the door just flies open, and like they're mooning us.
I think I remember that too. That's rad.
um,
Um, yeah, I mean, it was definitely a fun time, and I think for me personally, it was that time when I was coming back from a much larger scene, and it was really nice to come home to a much smaller scene where everybody knew each other and like everybody got along, and you know I met you shortly after I moved back, like I said, and I think our group of friends, like definitely we did have our own language and our own like whatever, and I think, and we don't really need to talk about that, but I think people sort of thought of us as standoffish because of it, which was never really the goal, I don't think, for any of us, like um or whatever, but
well,
um
Norm. I think Norm was from Texas to the Reason was doing these series like a month ago or so, and he would
mm,
start every one off and be like, why did you get into punk? Like there's something antisocial about punk, and you want to be part of this thing that's like embraces a counterculture, and like
mm,
it's like, why are you fucked up basically is the question. Like what
right,
made you not
right.
want to be home doing your homework and hang out with a bunch of idiots like drinking on a Wednesday night when you're 14? Like it was. And so
Yeah.
yeah, I think being part of a little standoffish scene is like maybe it just made us feel like we were part of something, because maybe
Right.
the rest didn't have anything for us. I definitely, it was definitely a thing for me. It was like this the most interesting thing, or the only thing I could look forward to was like band practice. It was like everything else in life was just like school sucked, and like my family sucked and all that kind of stuff. So you
Right.
know, being a part of that scene was definitely like something like yeah, it just gave you something that other people found in other institutions like church or school or a career or something. But
Right.
yeah, definitely there's definitely a camaraderie of kids who didn't want to conform. I think it was
Yeah. All right. Well, it looks like we're pretty close to an hour, and so I've been ending these shows by asking people, what records what's the one record that they still listen to from back then that like still like inspires them to play music or do whatever they're doing. Obviously, because I collect a lot of records, it seems to make sense for me to ask that question. So, if you had to pick one, would it be a local group? Would it be, like what would it be? What's the one record you still go back to and say, yeah, this is still fresh?
um I really like that. God, that's tough, man. There's a lot that just like I'll be, if I'm in the right mood, I'll be like, oh, this is a great record. Sometimes I'll be like, this is great. I'll put it on and be like, oh, I'm not feeling this at all. Like I need to
Yeah,
go listen to it or something. Like, um,
yeah,
that Portraits of Past album, the full length, the purple one on Ebullition, that
yeah.
was one of my favorites. My new band, actually, we ended up playing with those guys in their new band. And I'm like, dude, why don't you guys play? Because they've played like 2 or 3 shows where I've gone to them and they're great, and they get like a huge drawing. And those
Yeah.
guys, are, oh yeah, well, we love the music. All 4 of us would do it, but the 5th guy, the singer, we're middle aged. He doesn't want to stand on a stage and scream all day. I was like, dude, I totally get that.
Yeah, right, right.
It's hard to take it seriously, like a middle aged like man, just screaming like you did when you're 18. So um,
Yeah.
it's unfortunate, but we made our bed. We got to stay with it. That's what we did when we were 18.
Right. Well, I think we've all lived our life, and we're pretty satisfied with it, and we don't really need to do it all over again, for sure. Well, Keola, man, I totally appreciate you getting on the internet for us and, and doing this interview. And
Yeah, out of the blue, man. Thanks. It was, like I said, I haven't thought about these days in a while until you asked me about it, and I was like, wow, it's okay. It's a nice time in my life. So thanks.
yeah, yeah, and keep us informed of your project if you know ever get those mixed and uploaded somewhere, and I will share that with the group.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll do.
All right, man. Thanks
Cool.
again. Take care.
Take care.